But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to my continued wall-to-wall coverage of NFL free agency. The new league year has not started, but that has not stopped the bombshells from going off. More fireworks, another massive trade, as if we haven't had enough of them today, has taken place. We'll talk about that on a separate video. But here I want to talk about the franchise tag. The NFL pushed back the deadline at which teams could use their tag on a specific player this year to try to see if they could get a deal reached on the CBA. So they pushed it all the way back until the legal tampering period. They got the CBA passed yesterday. It's signed, sealed, delivered. And so now everything can kind of fall into place, including the franchise tag. Now teams cannot use the franchise tag and the transition tag in any given offseason together. It's either one or the other. And so tough decisions to be made for teams like the Cowboys, who were probably going to transition tag Amari Cooper and franchise tag Dak Prescott. Now they had a tough decision to make. The Titans knocked theirs out by getting a long-term deal reached with Ryan Tannehill so they could free up the franchise tag to slap on Derrick Henry, which they ultimately did. Today was the deadline for that at 12 p.m. You had to have it turned into the league as to whether you were going to use your franchise or transition tag this year on a specific player. 15 teams, nearly half the league, used either a transition or franchise tag to retain the services of a player. I can't recall a time where that many teams used a franchise and or a transition tag in a season. Normally when I make a definitive statement like that, someone will come out of nowhere and say, hey, well, there was that time in 2015 where 18 teams. I don't see that happening this time. 15, I can't remember a time where this many teams used a franchise tag or transition tag to retain the services of a player. I don't even remember it hitting double digits before. Honestly, it's usually 8 or 9 guys that get the franchise tag. There's probably been a year where there's been 10 or 11. This is 15 though, nearly half the league. It's insane. Let's run through the list quickly about the players that received tags from their respective teams and what this actually means going forward for that player and the team that slapped the tag on that particular player. So let's run through this list quickly. We start with Kenyon Drake, the only player on this list to receive a transition tag, which gives the Arizona Cardinals the right to match any deal that he were to receive in free agency. So essentially, if he signed to an offer sheet, the Cardinals could then match that deal if they so choose. If they decline to match that deal, they would then receive compensation for Kenyon Drake. And that would be in the form of most likely a second-round pick. But we will see what happens and what type of transition tag was slapped on him. Nonetheless, Kenyon Drake right now is going to, by all accounts, be an Arizona Cardinal. It seems like unless someone is willing to sign him to a deal that the Cardinals are refusing to match and unwilling to match in free agency. We'll see what happens. But to me, he's a perfect fit for that offense. You saw how much more smoothly that offense ran once he got to Arizona. It's the reason why they felt comfortable enough moving David Johnson. He is the perfect match for Cliff Kingsbury's offense. And so I think they want him back. There's a number that they have in mind to pay him and a certain amount of years that they want to pay him. There's a little bit of an impasse there between the two parties, but they've slapped this tag on him. Now it's up to Kenyon Drake's agent and his handlers to go out and find him a deal that will get him out of Arizona if that is what he desires. Now you go to all the franchise tags that were handed out, 14 in total. We start in Baltimore with Matt Judon being slapped with a franchise tag. Not a massive surprise here, although I wasn't sure if they were going to do that. Similar to last year when they lost their edge rusher in Zadarius Smith to the Green Bay Packers. I thought they were just going to allow Matt Judon to test free agency and see what happens. But they did not want to lose yet another young edge rusher. And so they slapped the franchise tag on Matt Judon. Now, the interesting thing here is Matt Judon is more of a defensive end, which is a little bit more pricey in terms of a franchise tag. They designated him as an outside linebacker. There may be a little bit of a grievance there. We'll see what happens. But Matt Judon most likely to be retained in Baltimore as he was slapped with a non-exclusive franchise tag. Cincinnati Bengals slapped the non-exclusive franchise tag on. It's AJ Green. Much expected. I've talked about this at least for the last 2 months that the Bengals were going to do this. If you're going to draft Joe Burrow #1 overall, you want to give him as many targets as possible to get the football to. They've got some weaponry out there, but they've got to stay healthy. Green wasn't healthy last year. They can't seem to keep the speedster on the field either. If he's able to stay healthy, that gives them another weapon. He was actually pretty good for them early in the season last year before he succumbed to injury. And then Tyler Boyd is out there. If you can keep all of those guys healthy, you've got a real good cluster right there of quality wide receivers to get the football to, including a true #1 in this league in AJ Green and a solid #2 in Tyler Boyd. And then Joe Mixon in that mix. And all of a sudden, if you can protect him, which is a big problem right now in Cincinnati, but if you can protect him, Joe Burrow will have a guy to get the football to, multiple guys to get the football to, including Joe Mixon out of the backfield. It'll be a really dynamic offense potentially. And bringing back AJ Green, to me, was the centerpiece of that. And this is a big move for Cincinnati as they try to work out a long-term deal with their aging star wide receiver. Dallas Cowboys slapped the exclusive franchise tag, a little bit more pricey to do so, but it ensures that Dak Prescott can't find another team out there willing to negotiate a contract with him and fork over the first round picks that would come with signing a player on a franchise tag. So he can't negotiate with another team. He's all Dallas's to negotiate with. And the Cowboys made sure they put themselves in a position that Dak Prescott would be donning the #4 jersey in Dallas for many years to come. Now it's just a matter of getting that long-term deal ironed out. I think they will ultimately find a way to do that before mid-July, when the franchise tag deadline to sign a long-term deal with these players that have been tagged comes and goes. So this is a big move for the Cowboys. It keeps Dak Prescott in Dallas. I know a lot of people out there, oh my God, Dak's not worth $33 million, which is the deal reportedly that he turned down. You guys are insane if you don't understand how this game works. And for Cowboys fans, they understand how this goes, because before Tony Romo, they were in the quarterback wilderness for well over a decade. They do not want to go back to where they were in the Chad Hutchinson and Drew Henson and Quincy Carter days. They do not want to go back there. Vinny Testaverde, Drew Bledsoe. I can go on and on and on with all the quarterbacks that they had to go through before they found Tony Romo, an undrafted quarterback out of Eastern Illinois. So they don't want to go down that road again. They got a guy. He has shown the ability to be elite in this league at times. Pay that man his money. They're going to do that eventually. This franchise tag ensures that he does not go anywhere else. The Denver Broncos franchise tagged safety Justin Simmons. My absolute favorite safety in the league is Justin Simmons. I talked about him very briefly because I knew there was no way the Broncos were going to let him out of Denver. It would be a catastrophic mistake. And John Elway has made a ton of mistakes out there, but one he wasn't going to make was allowing this guy to hit the streets. And thus, the franchise tag was applied to Justin Simmons, and rightfully so. This guy is a stud. To me, one of the centerpieces of their defensive scheme out there, and he allows them to do so many things, and he's so versatile, and he allows them so many flexibilities in their defense that there was no way they could part ways with this guy. And so Justin Simmons back in Denver, franchise tag. We'll see if they can work out a long-term deal. Jaguars franchise tag Yannick Ngakoue. This is a guy that wants out of Jacksonville, wants a long-term deal. And I don't necessarily know if it has to be somewhere other than Jacksonville. Just think he wants his money, and he's not sure if he's going to get it from Jacksonville or not. At this point, I think he just wants his money, and he doesn't think he's going to get it from the Jaguars. This may be another nail in the coffin of trying to get this guy long-term back in Jacksonville. If he already feels like he should have been paid, and he feels like this is another slap in the face that he can't test free agency and get his long-term deal and get his bread all in one lump sum, then this could be the final straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of Yannick Ngakoue being back in Jacksonville on a long-term deal. Now, money talks and everything else walks. If he has a big year, the Jaguars decide to finally fork over the cash. Maybe he does sign on the dotted line, but I can tell you this much. He wanted out. He wanted free agency. He's not going to get it. The Jaguars slap the franchise tag. Now, it's non-exclusive. A team could come calling, but most likely than not, when a team puts the franchise tag on a player, you're not forking over a first-round pick to get that player onto your roster. So the Chiefs also used the franchise tag on a defensive player, this time along the defensive line. In defensive tackle, Chris Jones, he's designated as a defensive end, but nonetheless, Chris Jones, to me, the centerpiece of their defense. As he goes, they go defensively. Tyrann Mathieu is in that discussion now as well. He was a huge part of what they did defensively this year and helping them win the Super Bowl. But Chris Jones, to me, is the havoc wreaker up front that defense has to have in order to operate at a high level. And so to me, it was a no-brainer. Either you bring back Chris Jones on a long-term deal or you slap this franchise tag on him until you can find a way to work out a long-term deal. That's what the Chiefs did. Chris Jones going to remain in Kansas City, it seems like, at least for the 2020 season. Hunter Henry, tight end in Los Angeles with the Chargers, slapped with the franchise tag. Redskins fans kept talking about this guy early on in the process, and I told them, just like I told them about Justin Simmons, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen because the Chargers aren't going to allow this man to leave. Again, he's dealt with some injuries, but when he's healthy, man, is he effective, and he's a red zone weapon. And thus, the Chargers felt like, look, we may move on from Phillip Rivers, but we're not moving on from a guy that he got the football to when he was healthy in Hunter Henry. Smart move by the Chargers. Lock this man up. They're going to find a way to work out a long-term deal. I imagine if he's able to stay healthy, I think this is one of those situations where I don't know if the Chargers are actually in any hurry to give this man a long-term deal because they want to see him stay healthy for 16 games. And if he's able to do that, I think he may actually see that long-term deal come his way from this Chargers organization next season. I could be wrong, and they could be working on a long-term deal as we speak. But in my mind, until Hunter Henry shows the ability to stay healthy, it's hard for a team, including the one that drafted him in the Los Angeles Chargers, to hand over a contract with a bunch of guaranteed money and a bunch of years attached to it. He's going to have to show them that he can stay healthy. I think that's why this franchise tag was used, because when he is healthy, he is ultra productive and one of the better young tight ends in the game. So we'll see what happens with Hunter Henry in 2020. If he's able to stay healthy, if he performs at a high level, if he does all of those things, he will get paid. Vikings franchise tag Anthony Harris, safety. I love this guy's game. I thought he emerged out of nowhere last year as really one of the true free safeties in this league. He was a breath of fresh air for that Vikings defense that at times could be stale, especially in that secondary. This guy made play after play after play, and I was really hot on his trail in free agency. I felt like if he were to come available, the Redskins should definitely take a look. It was going to cost a pretty penny because this guy played at a very high level, but I heard rumblings and grumblings as we started to get closer and closer to this point that the Vikings were going to do everything in their power to keep this guy on board, including using the ability to renegotiate with Kirk Cousins and extend him to lessen that cap number to then be able to sign a guy like Anthony Harris. And they slapped this franchise tag on him, I think, with the hopes of working out a long-term deal. They've also cut guys that have been on this roster like Xavier Rhodes to free up a little bit more cap space. So they're looking to try to keep a guy like Anthony Harris, and for good reason. This guy is a young budding star in this league if he continues to ascend at the rate that we saw last season. You look at the New England Patriots. This was a bit of a surprise to me. They franchise tagged offensive guard Joe Thuney. Now, I didn't see this one coming. And honestly, you never know what the hell's going on out in New England. They usually keep everything tight and quiet out there. And so this one came out of nowhere, but this is a guy they felt like they needed to retain. They weren't sure if they were going to be able to do that. And, in this league, offensive linemen come at a premium. They hit the free agent market. They're going to get paid. The Patriots much rather deal with Joe Thuney on the franchise tag and try to work out a long-term deal rather than trying to allow him to test free agency, get a massive deal, and not be able to match it. This way, they get a chance to keep a guy that has been really good for them since being drafted out of NC State. You look at the Giants, they franchise tagged a guy that they traded for midseason last year before the trade deadline, and Leonard Williams. I didn't know if they were going to do this. I thought they were going to allow him to test free agency. No one wants to trade for a guy midseason, give up draft capital, and then watch him walk the following offseason. Like the Cowboys with Amari Cooper, it's going to be tough if he, in fact, does leave, because you forked over a first-round pick in the case of Amari Cooper, and the Giants gave up draft capital to get their hands on Leonard Williams, and they don't want to see this guy just leave for nothing. So they kept him on this franchise tag. We'll see if they decide to get a long-term deal done, or if they want to see one more year, a full year in New York of Leonard Williams before they give him a long-term deal. We'll see what this situation goes. Steelers, franchise tag, Bud Dupree. I didn't know if they were going to do this or not, but I think he makes the perfect tag team partner for what they've got out there in Watt. TJ Watt has been stellar and spectacular, and he's emerging as one of the elite young pass rushers in this league. You couple him with Bud Dupree on the other side, and all of a sudden you got a mean, nasty tag team tandem over there after the quarterback. And so to me, the Steelers are always best when they've got a core group of backers that can get it done. And now you've got two guys coming off the edge, at least for the next season. I don't know if this is going to turn into a long-term deal or not for Bud Dupree, but one thing's for sure, at least for the 2020 season, you're going to have a ferocious twosome coming off the edge in TJ Watt and now Bud Dupree. And we'll see if Dupree gets a long-term deal in Pittsburgh done or not. Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a tough decision. I talked about teams having to make a decision between one or another player because of not being able to use multiple tags. This was one of those teams that had a decision to make. Initially, were they going to franchise tag Jameis Winston or not? I don't know. If the transition tag were available, would they have slapped it on him or maybe Shaq Barrett? I don't know, but we'll never find out because that opportunity was taken away from them. And so they decided to use the franchise tag on Shaq Barrett, and now Jameis Winston is going to be allowed to hit free agency. Will he be back in Tampa? Will he play elsewhere? It's starting to sound like Jameis Winston's going to be wearing a different uniform in the upcoming season. We'll see how that situation shakes itself out. But one thing's for certain, the Bucs valued what Shaq Barrett did on a one-year, $5 million deal last season. He tore the league to shreds. In his first 7 or 8 games of the season, this guy was on an MVP pace. Had the Buccaneers actually been a good team early in the season, you'd have heard this guy's name more, because what he did early in the season last year was utterly ridiculous, and he damn near hit 20 sacks last season. This guy played at an extremely high level, and for what the Bucs paid on a one-year deal, they were stealing last year. They decided they're going to re-up with Shaq Barrett, keep him on the franchise tag, and maybe iron out a long-term deal. They also brought back JPP. I didn't know if they were going to do that or not, but they also brought him back on a deal. So it looks like they're going to have their 2 pass rushers back as well. Titans, they bring back Derrick Henry on the franchise tag, and they had a decision. As I talk about all these teams with decisions to make, if they didn't get the long-term deal done with Ryan Tannehill, they were going to have a huge decision to make, whether to let Derrick Henry walk or to let Ryan Tannehill test free agency. Well, they took that decision out of the equation by giving Ryan Tannehill the 4-year, $118 million deal that he signed just a day ago. So now they freed themselves up to use the franchise tag on their bell cow, Derrick Henry. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names who tore the league to shreds, led the league in rushing last season, and went on an enormous tear in the postseason, helping lead and guide this Tennessee Titans team all the way to the AFC Championship. His reward, not a long-term deal, which is what he was looking for. Instead, a franchise tag. Well, will he get a deal done? I think the Titans are looking to get a long-term deal done with him. We'll see if that actually does take place or not. The thing I hate about franchise tags with running backs is that, look, there's a short shelf life for these backs, and a year on a tag means one less year you have to get paid. I don't like when running backs get franchise tagged. I hope this results in a long-term deal for Derrick Henry, but we shall C. And finally, the Washington Redskins used their franchise tag on their former first-round pick, offensive guard Brandon Scherff. He's going to remain in Washington. They've been trying to iron out a long-term deal between the two sides. Haven't been able to do so. However, they love what Brandon Scherff brings to the table, feel like he's a part of the future and going to be a staple in this Redskins organization for some time. And so they want to lock him up. And looks like they're going to use the franchise tag to try to give themselves more time to do so. So 15 players in total receiving either a franchise or a transition tag, and only one of them receiving an exclusive tag, that being the Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. Only one receiving a transition tag, that being Cardinals running back Kenyon Drake. Everyone else receiving a non-exclusive franchise tag. Going to be interesting to see how many of these teams actually reach deals with these players before mid-July and the franchise tag deal deadline. So we'll keep tabs on that. But one thing's for certain, a lot of teams wanting to hold on to their players. And I think a lot of these franchise tags kind of were precipitated by the CBA uncertainty. Maybe if there were something in place, concrete, that teams knew about, maybe you wouldn't have seen as many franchise tags handed out this offseason. Maybe you would have. I don't know. But one thing's for sure, I think there was definitely a correlation between the late CBA being pushed through and teams not really knowing what the salary cap was going to be, kind of being held in limbo, not knowing how much they could spend and allot for this player because they didn't know where the cap was going to be because of the CBA. And once that was done and they kind of knew where they stood from a salary cap standpoint, it was kind of too late now, back up against the wall, had to make a decision. And a lot of these guys ended up being tagged. So that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. I am not done. Many, many more videos to come, including a live one tonight where we break everything down from the beginning of the tampering period. A lot of things to talk about. Big trades, a bunch of teams signing players, and of course, all of these franchise tags and more. We'll talk about it tonight. Another big trade with the Colts and the 49ers. Going to break that one down here in a second. So you guys enjoy this video. Like it, subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I'll see you guys a little bit later on. Tag, you're it. Louie T Network.